The Cogitating Ceviché. Presents The Algorithmic Aristocracy, A Look at Digital Feudalism, by Conrad Hannon. Narration by Amazon Polly. In the annals of history, power has always rested in the hands of those who controlled the most valuable resources. From the landowning aristocrats of medieval Europe to the oil magnates of the 20th century, wealth and influence were directly tied to the mastery of physical assets. Today, we find ourselves in an age where land and oil have taken a back seat to a new, seemingly intangible resource: data. And just as feudal lords once ruled vast swaths of farmland, today's power is concentrated in the hands of tech companies whose sprawling empires of data dwarf the fiefdoms of the past. While the tools of control may have changed, the dynamics remain eerily familiar. The structure of modern society, with its reliance on a few enormous corporations for the essentials of daily life, communication, commerce, information, bears more than a passing resemblance to the feudal systems of old. The kings and queens of this new order? Companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and a select few others who not only dominate the digital landscape but hold the keys to much of our personal, professional, and societal existence. The modern-day fiefdoms. To understand the nature of digital feudalism, one must first look at the modern equivalents of the medieval fiefdoms, the ecosystems created by big tech. In the feudal system, land was divided among nobles, each of whom controlled a parcel of territory, extracting taxes and labor from the peasants in exchange for protection. Today, that land is replaced by platforms, digital territories upon which we, the users, labor, contributing our data, time, and attention. Take Google, for instance. In the same way that a medieval lord controlled the farms and fields of his domain, Google controls the vast landscape of the internet, its algorithms deciding which crops, search results, will flourish and which will wither. Google's reign extends far beyond its search engine. The company's reach is pervasive, from YouTube to Gmail to its ubiquitous advertising empire. It governs how information flows, what is seen, and what is hidden, much like a feudal lord determined the production and consumption of resources on his land. Meanwhile, Facebook functions as the social fiefdom, where users live their digital lives under the watchful eye of their virtual lord. Here, relationships are cultivated, political movements sparked, and personal data harvested, often without conscious awareness on the user's part. Like a benevolent duke, Mark Zuckerberg offers his subjects free access to this digital space in exchange for their most valuable asset, their data. This mined and monetized information enriches the platform and ensures its continued dominance. Then there is Amazon, the merchant kingdom of our age. In medieval times, towns and markets were often the domains of local lords who controlled the flow of goods and services. Amazon has taken this model to its logical conclusion, creating a marketplace so vast that it has swallowed almost all others. Its warehouses, modern-day castles, store an endless array of goods, while its delivery infrastructure ensures that these treasures can be brought to your door with all the efficiency of a knight's steed. But like any medieval lord, Amazon's control comes at a price: the destruction of smaller merchants, the erosion of local economies, and the accumulation of data on every purchase you make. These corporations, with their vast and overlapping fiefdoms, have created a new kind of digital aristocracy, where the wealthiest and most powerful entities no longer trade in land or oil, but in algorithms, user data, and digital platforms. The digital serfs. If the tech companies are the lords of this new age, then we, the users, are their serfs. In the medieval period, serfs were tied to the land, bound by obligations to their lords, who offered protection and sustenance in return for their labor. Today, we are similarly bound to the platforms we use. Our modern lives are inextricably linked to Google's search algorithms, Facebook's social networks, and Amazon's retail empire. These companies offer us services that we find indispensable, and in return, we offer them something far more valuable than the occasional crop: our data. Much like medieval peasants' agricultural output, data is harvested relentlessly. Every search query, online purchase, and status update is tracked, stored, and monetized. Just as peasants pay taxes to their feudal lords, we pay for the convenience of our digital services, not in gold or grain, but in privacy and personal information. In exchange, we are promised protection from hackers, malware, and cyber threats. Google promises to safeguard our emails, Facebook vows to protect our identities, and Amazon assures us that our credit card details are secure. But as with the medieval peasants, this protection is partial and contingent. We are left vulnerable to the whims of these platforms, with little to no recourse when breaches occur or data is misused. The protections are ultimately more for the platforms than for the people, much like the medieval walls that protected the lord's castle but left the peasants' huts exposed. Much like medieval serfs who had no choice but to work the land they were born on, we find ourselves trapped in these digital ecosystems. The cost of leaving is simply too high. To disconnect from Google is to lose access to critical tools for work and communication. To quit Facebook is to sever ties with friends, family, and communities. To abandon Amazon is to sacrifice the convenience of near-instant access to goods. In effect, we are bound to the digital land we inhabit, our data serving as both the currency and the chains that keep us in place. Data, the new land. If land was the basis of wealth and power in feudal times, data is its modern equivalent. Just as the feudal lords derived their wealth from the land's productive capacity, today's tech companies derive their wealth from the productive capacity of our data. But where land was a finite resource, data is effectively infinite. The more users a platform has, the more data it can harvest and the more wealth it can generate. In this way, tech companies are engaged in a kind of digital land grab. Every new user who joins Facebook, every new product purchased on Amazon, and every search query entered into Google's engine represents another plot of data-rich land that can be exploited. And much like the medieval lords who jealously guarded their estates, these companies are fiercely protective of their data empires, using sophisticated algorithms and proprietary technologies to ensure that competitors cannot encroach on their territory. The result is a kind of data-driven oligopoly, where a handful of companies control the vast majority of the world's digital wealth. Just as medieval nobles consolidated their power through strategic marriages and alliances, today's tech giants maintain dominance through acquisitions, mergers, and partnerships. The acquisitions of WhatsApp and Instagram by Facebook or Whole Foods by Amazon are the modern equivalents of medieval land annexations, expanding the reach and influence of these digital aristocrats. The illusion of freedom. One of the most striking features of modern digital life is the illusion of freedom. Tech companies present their platforms as open, egalitarian spaces where users are free to express themselves, share ideas, and connect with others. But beneath this veneer of openness lies a highly controlled environment where power is concentrated in the hands of a few, and users are subject to the whims of algorithms and corporate interests. Just as the medieval peasants were ostensibly free to leave their lord's land but, in practice, had nowhere else to go, we are technically free to quit Facebook, Amazon, or Google. But to do so would mean severing ties with much of modern life. These platforms have shaped and mediated our social interactions, consumer habits, and even political discourse. To leave is not a real option, and the tech companies know it. The terms of service agreements we all blindly accept are the modern equivalent of the loyalty oaths medieval vassals swore to their lords. Buried within these lengthy documents are clauses that give tech companies immense control over our data, our content, and even our digital identities. We sign away our rights in exchange for access to their services, much as medieval peasants traded their labor for access to their lord's land. The rebel peasants. In every age there are those who resist the dominant order, and the digital age is no exception. The modern Luddites, those who attempt to resist or reject the influence of big tech, are a small but vocal group. These digital rebels refuse to use smartphones, avoid social media, and seek out alternative, non-corporate platforms. But their numbers are few, and their impact is minimal. Just as the medieval peasants' revolts were swiftly crushed, the efforts of these modern rebels are easily co-opted or dismissed by the tech giants. Alternative platforms that offer privacy and independence are either bought out by larger companies or remain niche services used only by a handful of die-hard users. Meanwhile, the masses remain tied to their digital fiefdoms, unaware or unconcerned about the power dynamics at play. The tech companies, much like the feudal lords of old, offer just enough convenience, security, and entertainment to keep the populace content. And for those who dare to resist, there is always the threat of exclusion, of being left behind in an increasingly digital world. Can we escape? The question remains, can we ever escape digital serfdom? The answer, for now, seems bleak. The platforms that dominate our lives have become so ingrained in the fabric of society that disentangling ourselves from them is almost impossible. Efforts to create decentralized alternatives, such as blockchain-based platforms or privacy-focused social networks, have yet to gain significant traction. And even these alternatives often rely on the same infrastructure controlled by the tech giants. Ultimately, we may be left with no choice but to accept our place in this new digital feudalism. Much like the medieval peasants who toiled under the watchful eye of their lords, we continue to labor in the digital fields, our data feeding the coffers of Silicon Valley's aristocracy. The more things change, it seems, the more they stay the same. The tools of power may be different, but the dynamics of control, of wealth concentrated in the hands of the few, of labor exploited for profit, remain as they always have. And in this new age of digital feudalism, we, the serfs, can only hope that our lords are kind. Thank you for your time today. Until next time, stay gruntled.